You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Marvel Comics Spotlight Podcast, Episode 2, Legacy 502. I'm here with my man, Matt. What up, Matt?
What up, Jim?
What up? And we were talking about this. I kind of let everybody know last week with the idea that we're going to do more of the bigger Marvel books, the interesting stuff, and kind of put the Star Wars stuff on the shelf for a little because that Dark Droids finally got to us. We were like, and wanting to do some bigger things. And I always keep saying the idea that you laugh at me saying we have a Marvel podcast, yet we don't really have a Marvel. We have an X-Men and a Star Wars one. We don't even talk about the big Marvel books, so it makes more sense. But just as a shout out to Niels, we'll maybe keep people up to date on some of those things, because me and you are still going to read the Star Wars books. And maybe like if we do this way and expand, because this week we're going to have other people on and have more books than the two we did last week. Maybe each month we'll check in here and give you a little Star Wars update show. Maybe. All I'll say is, yep, those droids are still having problems. That's all we'll say. Because that's going to be going on. Remember, that's going on until 2024. It's going on for the rest of the year. That's crazy.
I read D-Squad. It was pretty funny. I mean, it was okay.
I actually read it, too. I just laugh at the title. It sounds like some weird porno or something. But you end up with this. And, we're going to have a couple books. Me and you are going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man and the new Captain America. And then I'll be joined by my man Jason from the Marvel X-Men show here on our feed. Me and him talking about Uncanny Spider-Man with Nightcrawler and me scratching my head of why this is even a thing. And then me and my man Brandon going all the way back to the beginning of the podcast, me and Brandon talking Predator, Wolverine, with a weird play that I think that Brandon was a little more like lenient in what was going on, but I'm not so sure it wasn't because he was drunk or so. Some of the ideas he has are a little wacky, but it helped him like the book, so that's fine. But we're going to start, me and you, with the Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man number 34. Neither of us are Zeb Wells fans, really. We haven't really enjoyed this run. I don't know that a lot of people have, right? I mean, it's pretty much most people crap on the run. But it's gotten better a bit since Kamala died, and they end up getting to what people would claim, this is the story that Zeb Wells wanted to tell. The stuff with Tombstone, things like that. But you get to this, evil Peter. Is this what we really wanted? Like, most people wanted to have, let's erase one more day. Let's go into this. Let's go into that. I don't know that goes and jives well with, evil Peter who's taken in the sins of the goblin. And it just, I don't know. This just doesn't feel like a well thought out idea overall. And me and you were talking before this. I don't know what happened to Patrick Gleason this issue, because it is not great. It is, again, Amazing Spider-Man number 34, written by Zeb Wells, art by Patrick Gleason, colors by Marcelo Menez, and VC's Joe Caramagna on letters. And so also, like, the things that I want out of this story and what we've got, I like the Tombstone stuff a bit at the beginning. And maybe I'd even go with more Janice and Robbie and, Randy.
That was pretty interesting, the beginning.
And it seemed like a cool little play of like, oh my God, you got Robbie who's always against Tombstone. Now they have the daughter-son type deal. That didn't work because it's comics. But here you're just having a play. And by the end, it looks like Dark Peter, we'll call him, comes in and does a little prank. And it made me giggle. But even then, you said like the art right away.
Yeah, the art fell off a cliff since the last issue, because we were even looking at it before this, comparing the two, and it's definitely a big difference.
It's just weird. Randy and Janice don't really look like themselves, and then Tombstone.
If they didn't call out that I'm Randy and I'm Janice, you wouldn't even know that was them.
It's not great, and it does not look like a Patrick Gleason deal. And so all of a sudden, they're there at the hospital, and the big thing, Randy wasn't talking to Janice, but he says he was worried about his parents, the whole deal of blaming this, that, and the other thing. At the one point when you end up having, Randy's like, listen, we got to see who's involved with this, and I want to be proactive. And then there's Janice, who legitimately is kind of a villain. It does things like, Randy is. Like, you know what I mean? Randy's just a guy. And then she's like, what? You're going to come after people like me and my dad? I'm like, what is he going to come after you with? Like, you know what I mean? Like, This would be something a little different. But yeah, he's going to get in big trouble if he goes after them, but it's that play. It should have been more of not coming after me. It's like, oh, you don't want to be associated with some people like me or my dad.
Yeah,
and the big play would be, yeah, I love you, Janice, but your dad he's too, like, he's pretty scary. He's a bad guy. But this whole play, as they're talking to see if he's okay, all of a sudden you see this beep because he's flatlined and really has he? Because with that, it's just that the machine has been unplugged, that he's connected. And then you hear laughing in the thing and you end up where they look out and see Dark Peter going away laughing like it's, like I said, a prank.
Yeah, he's cackling like the Green Goblin, but look at the tombstone. He's horrible in this. And the doctor, what does he have? A shaved side of his head?
Yeah, he looks like he has a Macklemore haircut.
What doctor has a Macklemore haircut?
I'm telling you, he should be at the end of this week's freaking Captain America book. Yeah. He's there at the German-American Bund rally. There, look at that thing. Right away, too. I mean, Tombstone has some money, right? The thing is, if you go and this doctor shows up, you ask for a second opinion, like he should have when he went to the barber's. But yeah, they go in there. Like I said, the big play here is somebody came in and unplugged the machine.
So plug it back in.
Yeah, it feels like was it Ashton Kutcher? Oh, man, no. it was Spider-Man cackling because he thinks he's funny. Like, it played out a weird scene. And in that, I see what Patrick Gleason's trying to do, but I'm such a dummy that you have Dark Peter, cackling. You end up having almost like Dark Knight Returns, what's it called, lightning. And then you have his crazy webbing. I swear to God, I thought he was trying to spell something out or make some sort of thing. And I'm sitting there, I'm like at the mall trying to look at those pictures that it's like, oh, it's a sailboat. Because I see an S. I'm like,
yeah, what is going on there, man? That's just, it's too much. It's
and what is where is he going with all this webbing and shit? But yeah, so it's like, oh my God. So then, and this is a rapid fire issue.
Yeah.
And you end up from there, you go and learn that Norman, he thinks he could just bust into people's apartments.
Doesn't even knock. Doesn't ring the doorbell. Doesn't do anything.
He ends up scaring Mary Jane because busting in on Paul and Mary Jane for movie night. And I don't know why I'm cursing. I'm going to have to bleep that out. This is how mad I am. But the idea there, he's like, hey, what's going on here? And all we can help, I think everybody just wants Paul to die. I mean, yeah, pranking Tombstone, hilarious. But please, Dark Peter, Dark Spidey, get the hell over here and just take Paul away.
Take him
please. Out. And he even mentions that that's what he kind of wants to do. But yeah, who knows what they could have been up to. Norman just busts in. I love this place. Like, oh my God, Peter's in trouble. Peter's in big trouble. Oh my God, you got to help Peter. What? What are you talking? What did I say? I didn't mean Peter was in trouble. Peter wanted me to come here to make sure that you were in It's like, come on, Norman, just stop. Just stop your nonsense. And just as a further deal, Patrick Gleason, who seems to have spent like a hot 2 minutes on this whole issue, decides that he's got to give us Jeff the Land Shark slippers. Like, stop with the slippers and draw something good here, because I like Patrick Gleason. This is amateur.
Those are very bad looking Jeff the Land Shark.
Yeah, because it looks like those eyes are off.
It's a mutated version.
Deal. Yeah, it's bad. And we're not the only ones who are saying, I do like Patrick Gleason art more than you, but this is not good.
And he took the time to draw the salt shaker in Mary Jane's hand. Like, why?
Yeah, the salt shaker. But yet when you have Dark Peter going around, zipping around, I'm thinking I've got to read through the lines here to see what's going on. So then you had, like you said, Tombstone. He looks terrible. So then you have all this play of and then you get oh my God, we're going to, and it all goes back to Gwen Stacy. Because then with a Dark Peter with the goblin, sins, you end up Mary Jane and Paul. We got to get out of town. Oh, we'll get out of town. Let's take the bridge. No, don't take the bridge. Take the tunnel. That doesn't really make sense.
No, you just insist on it, but it's just weird.
It doesn't make sense. It's only to give, it's almost a joke, but almost the idea of, oh man, goblins and those, those bridges. Because here's the thing. You go in the tunnel, and when you have that, you see it by the end where it looks like Peter is going to go, he's just going to take you to the bridge anyway, right? He's just going to go up to that bridge. He even says when I'm going to get that Paul. And so Norman warns them. And at one point, they even, do you think we can trust Norman? Well, no, but whatever. And then we go. And the other bit here is that back and forth with Craven. you have Kraven, who is the clone son type deal of the other Kraven, the actual Kraven, but this is now the actual Kraven. And so you're going to play with that a lot. You're going to play with, I'm not my father, but I am, but I'm not.
I don't think anybody cares about that. They just want to just assume this is regular Kraven. Nobody cares about that convoluted mess with all those clones and all that.
And all that. Remember the whole hunt, and they were
wasn't that
each other
Nick
down.
Spencer's nonsense?
Yeah, it was. And it was the idea of, he even had it recently in a lesser version of the Penguin, where you end up having that bad guy and he wants to pass on his legacy, but to get there, you have to go, instead of staying the weekend at a haunted mansion, you got to kill all your siblings, and the one that lives ends up being the one that is actually even allowed to kill the father to get. But it is convoluted. And at this point, it's just easy to just say Kraven, but they're really pushing that. And they're also pushing something that I don't know that people love, just the story with Kraven, because overall, I don't have any interest in it. I don't really care. You have what is, black suit Spider-Man again. He's got the sins of the Goblin. You're not real into it, but I see a lot of people, but I don't know why you're convoluting it up with Kraven
because back in the late 80s, there was an arc where Kraven buried Spider-Man alive. And I think this is the opposite of this, yeah.
It was just Kraven's last hunt, but switched around for Peter.
Yeah, switched up, exactly.
And it could have ended there. But now you just, what I'm saying is now he's just there in the coffin trying to get out.
There's no way you can get out of that. I mean, you're getting crushed by that
Norman
dirt.
At the end seems to save
he saves him.
But so then Peter goes off to yell at Norman, and it's all about Gwen. Did you think about Gwen? Did you do this? And hey, I love having this goblin power, because anybody who's done me dirty, I'm going to kill him, and I'm going to get him, and I'm going to get Paul, and I'm going to get Mary Jane, and I'm going to do all this. Then, just out of the deal, you have Ashley, the Queen Goblin, the deal where she thought that getting those sins and that this would solve everything, and it didn't. It's almost that play of, well, I thought if I did this, it would make my life better, but it didn't. So now she's going to, it seems by the end, try to help Peter, because that's not what she might feel responsible for the idea that wasn't what she wanted. She didn't want to give the sins to Peter or Spider-Man. She wanted them to get back into the Goblins so that they can then kill him. That didn't work. And you have Kraven buried. So all of this goes, Peter then, and we're just going to go through this real quick. Peter ends up going, and who cares if you took the bridge and the tunnel, when you got super suit, black suit, rocket-powered Spider-Man who goes in and starts throwing bombs at everybody. Like, everybody's dead, right?
Yeah, he's killed hundreds of people, if not thousands. There's no getting out of that. Yeah.
No, and then just imagine that the tunnel
collapses and everybody
dies.
They're all
dead. But the big play, though, is as Kraven's trying to get out of his coffin, Norman needs to figure out a way to stop Peter and get him back to normal. In the meantime, Peter is after Paul and Mary Jane. Hopefully he can take down Paul and just slice and dice. And Ashley feels bad, wants to save Kraven, feels bad for Peter, so she's going to go. So at the end, you have the crazy, almost like, oh my God, the people who were together at first are now teamed up separately with Peter and Norman, because you end up where Kraven is saved by Norman, who says, we got to make this right. And Ashley says it's not Peter's destiny to be doing this with the goblin sins. So again, I thought that this was the play of, all right, we're going to show Peter will now realize how bad the goblin sins are. I thought he'd be able to fight him a little more. But as it's not being able to fight it, now we'll understand Norman more. But now I'm just thinking that it's going to be Norman now sacrificing his own self to take the sins back. We'll get Goblin back, and who knows? I don't know. Right? But it's a convoluted way to get to it. And really, the art is, there are parts where it is just really, really bad. But by the end, it's just like all swirling together. And by the end, I'm like, I don't know that I really got anything out of this issue that I enjoyed. There wasn't really that moment where I'm like, oh man, that's really cool. Or, oh my God, I didn't think of that. It is just Peter going around beating up people, blood everywhere. You even mentioned before.
Oh, it's over the top, man. He's just beating the crap out of
Because again,
Norman.
It's supposed to be that, well, you're used to this normal Spider-Man. Well, here it is. And I just think that it's just too much. And overall, the story itself, it's more pomp and circumstance. It's like, it's shock and awe and not really story. And the shock isn't too shocking and the awe isn't there because the art, I think, is down.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to tell two parallel stories and tie them together at the end, and it just doesn't work for me. I don't like it.
Yeah, and well, like you said, you even brought up Kraven's Last Hunt. The thing, Zeb Wells is trying to get you some nostalgia, but trying to make it a twist and a turn here, and I just, it's not doing it for me. I know a lot of people are, and I actually came on and did a YouTube video, either last issue or the issue before, and did say that I was actually happy that Zeb Wells was at least getting a little better. He had some momentum going. Seems something might be interesting out of it, but I don't know why. But with the art, not that great. By the end, I realized, like, there's not really much going on here. There's not really that much of a story, and not really. And one of the things in this is like, oh no, Kraven, don't use the shotgun in the thing. I'm like, I really don't care. Like, if you ended up going and seeing the top of that graveyard, bam! Oh man, I mean, I wouldn't lose sleep over Kraven in a coffin being buried by Peter. Yeah, it might be Peter blaming it, but then it kind of doesn't because he's taking care of himself there. But then with Norman grabbing him, like, hey, we got to make this red. I'm like, all right, you just, like, at that moment, if this makes sense, you're seeing that the story itself wasn't anything. It was just to set up what's coming next. Like, it wasn't really like, okay, you end up burying Kraven, but you buried him so that Norman could save him so they could fix this. It didn't feel like
how would Norman even know where Kraven is?
Yes. Why did he bust into Mary
Jane? To reach down that stick
apart?
Down there and pull him out?
Yeah, he's there with the Buddha stick. He's there with this freaking spear that he ended up getting the sins and brings it in. It's like, hey, I got your sack. I don't know. At least, Queen Goblin would know because there's explosions coming from the tunnel. Like, I guess
we
that's
need Spider-Boy to come save this issue.
Well, Spider-Boy could show up and actually say, why do you have what looks like a ponytail coming out the back of your head like some ancient kung fu master? Black suit Spidey, what's going on? Because, again, in this book, there are, I mean, seriously, Norman's hair is always bad.
Worst hair in
Norman's
comics.
never had a good hair day.
No.
It looks like at that point that Peter might have a Kung Fu Master's ponytail. Paul has the hipster man bun. And then you got old Tombstone's doctor with that Macklemore haircut. The worst hair issue that I've ever seen in my life in any comics, because everybody has some sort of thing wrong with their hair is what's going on here. It's nonsense. So, yeah, I'm even saying, like, I guess Janice's, poof bun at the top. She's had that before, but still, I just don't get it. I don't get it. But Norman, he can't help himself. That hair is always bad. But yeah, every man bun, we got this, we got that. Just bad. But overall, what would you give this?
5.5 for me.
Yeah, I think I'm 5.5. I could go to a 6 maybe, but I'm not now. And that's the funny thing is the play with Norman, like, he does show up and find Kraven, but he finds him because Kraven has, like, launched the spear out of the... It's so ridiculous. And then Norman pulls him out. And
very coincidental, in my opinion.
Yeah, like, it's like, it's trying to be horror, but I'm giggling throughout because it's so ridiculously over the top and nonsense. I mean,
I don't need horror in Spider-Man comics. I don't need that.
Yeah, so... There you go. That's that one. But we'll move on to a new number one that we probably like a little bit better. A little bit better. Though I saw some people, getting upset about the cliffhanger. And I'll tell everybody, I actually went and showed Matt some stuff before we started. That sounds real sus, but it's actually just normal stuff from history.
You do due diligence on this one.
Completely makes that last scene that we see, it's not forced or made up. This should happen. This is what happened in New York City, especially at this time frame. And we'll get into that by the end. But it is Captain America coming back with a book that people were excited. Yeah, the Lansing and Kelly stuff with Stephen. Lansing and Kelly are not that good. To me, they're very boring, vanilla, mid writers. They're not very good. I've never really read that many things that I like. Some people like, the Kang stuff that I thought it was boring and convoluted. I think that they end up doing nothing that excites me. And that Cap, I just got bored with. But this one, New Beginnings here. Captain America #1, written by J. Michael Straczynski, art by Jesus Saez, colors by Matt Hollingsworth, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. I like the art. I saw some people say that they like Jesus Saez, but they don't think he works with Cap. I thought it was okay.
I think it's listen, the last thing we saw him on was Jason Aaron's Punisher. And we all know how that went. I mean, this is a much higher profile book, which is what he should be on, because I think the art is excellent.
Yeah, I like the art. And so what you get in this issue, and it's a bit oversized, you're not going to get a lot of action except for these weird, like you get action, but it's this weird stuff at the beginning just so you get it. And I think that really what they're playing here is as you go and fight a, Transformer kaiju wolf that's climbing up a building, you get the comic booky over the top action even when Sue comes and asks Steve to help the Fantastic Four. And you show that you have that. But on the other hand, Steve is also a guy about, his past. And he helps people out normally and stuff like that. So I do like the combination, though. Well, kind of wanted to see more of the stuff like that crazy Transformers kaiju wolf.
Yeah, the action scenes almost seem out of place in the story that they're telling here, which I think is on purpose because it's more of a backstory, low key type thing, which is fine. But you got to throw some action in.
Yeah, I think it's throw the action in, but again, I think it's also to show that even though Steve gets involved in these, because these are over the top things going on.
Why is he with the Fantastic Four? He doesn't even make sense in this.
Come out of nowhere, and he ends up it's so over the top crazy that I think it's one of those to remind people that while Steve does get involved in the craziest things, he's in space, he's in the microverse, stuff. He's in that, that he actually still is a grounded guy who, maybe the idea, like I say, of Nightwing, one of his biggest powers is he's just a good dude who tries to help people, because it really does go back and forth between the now where his apartment that he's living in, and that's been set up with Lansing and Kelly, and he's been going through that, where his mom and him grew up. He's going to end up, they're going to evict everyone, they're going to tear it down, they're going to get rid of it, and he's upset. And I like the idea that a lot of times you have books where you think, and it's in both companies, like, why wouldn't he just call Tony Stark? And then people, he's too proud, or hey, Tony can't fund everything, or whatnot. He just calls Tony and says, right hey, and he just doesn't say, can I have money? He says, listen, I've never seen when somebody will say, hey, I want you to give me a loan against my Avengers salary. I thought that was pretty cool. The funny play in it, in my wink wink, is nobody has him on the Avengers anymore. It's always Sam. So he's never going to be able to pay this back. Yeah, I'm telling you, the ideal where he's like, well, that's all cool and all, Steve, but we don't really have you on the team anymore because we like the look of Sam on the team, because he always kind of gets passed up. So it made me giggle.
It's not a hard sell, though. New York City, real estate cheap. I think you'd be dumb not to buy that. I don't know.
Yeah, and he does. The problem is I'm telling you, it's funny. He goes over the plan with Tony, like, hey, Tony, I'm going to buy this thing, even if he goes even more, because he's kind of coy about it. But I love it. He's like, no, Tony, listen. Yes, it is the apartment my mom grew up, but it's a historical place. And actually, it's like in the middle of Manhattan. It's here, it's there. And Tony's all in. Tony's like, this sounds awesome. Oh, my God. And he goes over and shows up and almost has a heart attack that it says rent control. Yeah. Like, there's no way. Tony's like, what are you doing? No profit here. That's all he's doing. But that's Steve. And again, this is a basics, back to the basics deal. If you don't know, if you know Steve's past, I still think that you can have some fun with him. Most people do. But I think it's nice enough to say. It reminded me
a lot of the Hawkeye story where he owned the apartment building.
Yeah.
It's very similar.
If we end up getting Pizza Dog and the Russian Tracksuit Mafia, then we're talking. The funny thing, it would play good against Steve, the Russian Tracksuit Mafia, but he would just.
I'm sure he'll have some people he has to deal with in this apartment.
It'd be funny if like Hawkeye shows up to just kind of like give him tips and things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was good. But yeah, so Steve ends up buying this, and now he's going to do, because he actually was talking to the superintendent before this about, hey, I got some problems here. And yeah, the problems are because one of the problems is you got Captain America living in this building and people attack it.
Yeah. Blowing holes in the walls and stuff.
So he's like, yeah, I can't help you there, and it's not my problem. The guy was weird. He seems like a nice guy, but he goes real heavy on the not my problem.
It's almost like he's got a bag of cash and somebody paid him off to leave.
He's running off. It'd be funny if it had like the dollar sign on it, like old school, and he's running off with the money. But yeah, he's like, I can't help. And they're going to buy it. So he gets the building and everybody's happy and they're bringing him food. And that's nice. And this lady ends up, and again, this is background, says, oh man, what about your mom? What all this and that? And he talks about his dad. Dad died after World War I. Him and his mom went to visit every year, twice a year. It's funny. He's, on the anniversary of the wedding and his birthday or death day or whatever. No. He really liked leap year and Easter.
Yeah, of course,
It
lady.
make me laugh if it ended up being like a weird play. Like if people thought this was really pushed and really over the top at points. Like if you would have had there, oh no, we definitely go July 4th because my dad, like you don't do that. You just say they went twice a year. And then his mom died. And then you have the two things and they're together and he's upset, but he's on his own at 14. And the lady even asked, wait a second. I love how she's doing the fangirl math. Wait a second. That was in 1936, and you didn't become Cap until 1940.
She knows everything about him.
She knows everything. And he's like, yep, June 22nd, 1940, and I was 18 then. Oh, but from 14 to 18, you were by yourself? Were you okay? And I love where she says, you were 14 until, that you were all alone, all on your own. And then he goes, I travel light. And that's not what she asked. Mm-hmm. I love the idea that he's like, I travel light, but the burden was heavy on my heart. But yeah, she's like, oh my God, how'd you survive? And he says, I got by. And you just see him beating up somebody there.
It looks like one of those Nazi guys.
Yeah, it looks like a military guy. So
yeah.
I think that, at least that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that you're seeing that ahead of time. But yeah, and I like how you go back and forth with it's like both Steves looking at the apartment. And then, the one goes off to get the flashback, the other. I thought that was okay. Mm-hmm. But in that, you end up where, again, back in the day after his mom died, he couldn't afford this apartment. And this guy tried to help him. And he ends up, and you have things getting thrown in here. You will mention his friend Arnie. And then you have a Mr. Mueller. And you start throwing like German, Jewish names, things like that in here. And it shows you that he has a lot of different friends, a lot of people trying to help him. Unfortunately, World War II is right around the corner. And that's going to really divide a lot of people. Even though we're all united against a common enemy, there's still bad things happen. And that's what I think is going on by the end of this issue.
Yes.
But they say, I tried my best. And yeah, I'm sorry. I can't just let you stay here for free. You're 3 months behind. It's too expensive. And he ends up, go and see what's going on. Maybe your friend can help you, all that. But Steve wants to do things on his own. And he ends up, in the past, he does end up, trying to do odd jobs. He is homeless. He's outside. He's sleeping on, in an alley on the roof.
It's only $30 that he needs, too, which is crazy.
Yeah, and he finally does try to get that, though. I was confused at one point, though. You end up where... in the current deal, he goes off with the Fantastic Four, then the fight. But when we go back, and I don't know. Everybody seemed to say to me that they didn't like the flashback stuff, but I liked it enough. Just to give you the tone of who Steve is. Again, if you know that, it's still okay to read this. And he ends up where you're getting close to, World War II. You end up in Europe right now. You have Germany that's just gone into Czechoslovakia, but promised the rest of Europe that Hitler said, I'm not going to do anything else. I just wanted to get back to homeland. You guys are all safe. I'll sign this. I'll sign whatever. You guys, and he does have support at this point, even in England. Like, this is just a guy who's doing his thing, and it's when he starts getting too crazy, but they don't know everything about him yet. So they even say, hey, and Steve right away is like, I don't trust that Hitler guy. Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't going to stop here. He's going to go. But it says where it's Arnie. It says, hey, the agreement signed by France, Italy, and the United Kingdom allows German leader Hitler to annex the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia in return for his promise that there'll be no further aggression. And the thing is, it's like, this is actual history. And that's what was going on. We're far from us getting involved in the war. And most people in the United States, they think that this is just stuff that's not happening to us. So why get involved anyway? And not everybody knows what really is going on. Yeah, so you're in that weird play.
Yeah, and after World War I think we just assumed there was a peace treaty and it was all going to be good, but there's this trouble brewing right now.
Yeah, there is trouble brewing, but even then, if you have trouble brewing in Europe and Britain, France, Italy are all signing agreements and saying everything's kosher with this, they think Hitler's fine. Mm-hmm. This thing. What does a Johnny New York care about Czechoslovakia? Most people wouldn't even know where it was on a globe or a map at this point. They'd be like, whatever, keep it over there. So you do find out by Arnie says, hey, I know this. It's really funny that he goes really into it. He might as well just say, listen, this is a place that hookers take people. He's like,
yeah, they got hourly rooms.
yeah. I mean, any room that rents by the hour, you're going to have an interesting crowd. You're going to have a lot of prostitutes there, seriously. And seriously, when I would go, if I would, I'd ask if I could rent by the minute for me, right? So you end up where Arnie's like, hey, here's this place, rents by the week, the day, the hour, the second. And he's like, okay, well, I can do that. Arnie wants to help out, but he's like, no, I need to do this myself. And he's like, selling papers, doing that, you're going to be able to do it? I can do it. And you see the guy, I mean, he's like the first dog walker. He ends up doing groceries. He's a newsie. He
Washing
also
cars.
looks like he's doing the classic. I wish that you had people still in those cars, because I would think that he's doing that at a red light, annoying people, but it looks like he set it up. People aren't in them. He's also possibly taking out trash. I'm not sure.
He was loading coal or something.
Yeah, like that, or, disposing of bodies. I mean, again, he says, I'm going to make this
putting
money.
in the work.
Yeah, and he wants to put in the work to be able to earn his way, and I think it's part of the deal of his mom taking care of him. There was a nice little thing when the landlord is like, oh, I remember your mom would watch you go to school, and she really loved you, and he'd say, yeah, I knew she was watching, but I didn't want her to let her know because I liked her doing, that sort of thing. So you end up having that, and the one big play that I thought, I don't know, because it sets up the villain going forward and sets up things, but we go off to this Travis Lane, who is,
it's weird.
It ends up coming out of almost like out of nowhere in South America, where he's trying to find this temple of Osmade the Undying, or also called the Adversary, and he ends up, it's like a monkey paw. He wants to live forever like this unliving, the guy who can't die, and he actually gets taken as a vessel by this. It was all a trap. And he ends up, there is that funny scene where it's almost like Mind Freak, like it's Chris Angel, like you're sitting there and he's like, so when are we going to be at the temple? What? We're already there.
Yeah.
And they're there. Holy crap, Mind Freak. But then he just gets taken over.
This guy was super sus, I don't know. The guide. Is he a devil or something?
That's the thing. The guide is Osmande. He's there to go, and I think that's the whole play. He is the guy, and he wants to get out of this vessel to go to that. That's when he says with, hey, it's kind of funny where he says, you think that you're being, smart and going, but you've been led here all along, and you've been duped, and here you go. And he ends up where the demon comes out of him and goes into this Travis Lane because he's, he's working his way up the ladder because he's an important guy. Then he goes off to see an ex-AIM scientist, Ariana Walters, but then says, hey, you're pretty good. Let's join up. I got a plan. We don't know what that plan is, but she's very impressed. They're going to get a bunch of AIM people to go. And away we go. And it really does feel like it's like one of those where he's so sus, and this will be kind of like a, that sort of thing, a Hydra thing, a Nazi thing. Like they're going to gather up people to go after the heroes. And they even say that they have people that they already want to take out. So we'll end, the thing ends here, and this is where people were upset, where you have Steve, and the guy, he's, 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing. He's famished. You have a guy coming. This guy's definitely a recruiter, too, for this, because he goes by, man, you look like you could use a ham sandwich. Steve's like, I've heard that before, jerk. He's like, no, I mean it. There's a rally going on. Everybody's fired up, big rally, and they're giving out food, soda pop. Actually, before that, I did laugh because I forgot all about the rent. I actually thought that they played where he went and worked, that he already made rent and he was being able to stay at that place. So I thought Steve was really dumb because this guy goes by and says, hot dogs, 10 cents, ice cold soda, 5 cents. And he's got a bunch of ones in his hand. He's like, I can't afford it yet. I actually thought he was talking about the food.
No, he wanted to wait to buy the food.
He has to wait to get the rent.
Yeah.
Because he says he needs 30, so that's the $29.45. I actually thought we were playing a comic booky thing where he says to Arnie, don't worry, I can take care of it. And we saw him working all those jobs thinking, okay, he got the $30 and he's in, but he still doesn't have it. I'm like, Steve, you got a bunch of ones. You can buy a hot dog and a soda. But he says, I won't eat until I actually get all the money to end up going and getting that 3 months early rent, because you have to have 3 months down. It was that crazy deal to make $30. This guy says you can go to a sandwich. And the funny play is reading it again, because you go and the guy's like, all right, buddy. And Steve says, on the level. Hey, thanks, brother. Forget about it. And the guy walks away. And then you really do have one quick panel of pretty much Nazi youth running around and like, oh, I'm telling you, if you had word, they'd be like, get back here, Hansel. We must go back to the rallies because they're just straight up Nazi youth. And then when you see that, I'm like, oh, crap, Steve is like
and
their
Steve
perfect
fits right
idea.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's their perfect deal. Like, is this going to be like the Germans? Like, you would be our greatest soldier. Like, nope, I'm not going to do that. But he gets a sandwich. I mean, they're hanging out free food, whatnot.
That sandwich looks like nonsense, too.
Yeah, it does. It looks like, first off, it looks like bologna with like lettuce. Who needs that? Like, I'm telling you, I would never in my life, maybe a hoagie, that's different, but an actual sandwich, there's not a lot. Like, I wouldn't make a ham sandwich with lettuce on it. For some reason, that doesn't work in my mind. Also, I would never have you ever had a ham sandwich with ketchup on it? Because that seems like the work of the devil. Like, you'd never do that, right?
No.
That's
mayonnaise
insane.
or whatever.
Yeah, maybe some, I don't mind sometimes maybe a little mustard, but I'd rather have mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Ketchup? It's like the idea. My wife the other day, I saw her. She made a soft pretzel and put ketchup on it. I've been married to you too long for this to be surprising me at this point. Like, why didn't I see this nonsense before?
I'm putting the ketchup on my hot dog, though.
Yeah, I don't mind that. People get all upset about that.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
Suck on that.
I'm telling you right there. He's like, hey, I'll have a hot dog with ketchup and my ketchup. and again, it's like, oh, no, Dieter. He said the ketchup here at the Nazi rally. Like, I need really over-the-top things happening at this play. But yeah, Steve's there. Notice that he's not had a bite yet, because if he did, people would get mad that he had a bite of a
He's
Nazi
not taking a bite of that stinking sandwich.
Right,
No
so
way.
he's there, and he's like, okay. And then I'm looking around. I see this guy walking behind him as he's looking at the sandwich. I'm like, I don't know about you, guy, but you don't look like the part. You're going to be pushed out here. You have a bunch of people standing around. They're doing their deal. But I'm telling you, this is actually not as bad, forced, or inaccurate as people would want to believe. Because especially at this point, you end up where and I love the idea that Steve, here's the worst part. Steve notices where he is by just looking up. There's no way he didn't see that Nazi swastika when he was getting his food, right? And all these people, and you end up, because this is a German-American Bund, the group where they're having an American Nazi rally to support the Nazis and Hitler. And this was straight up something that happened very often in New York, especially New Jersey, as me and you went and looked at some things. It was bad. I mean, you can look up pictures right now where, first off, the Nazi, they ended up taking over and pretty much having a rally that filled Madison Square Garden, and people are having the time of their life. You also have pictures of people in New Jersey towns where they had parades with Nazis, everything Nazi, and people in the town zig-heiling the people going by in just New Jersey. Like, this was something where people were going with the message. You kind of forget about it because we end up fighting and finding out, and Hitler and America goes against them. But there was plenty of this going on. This is not forced. It's not an alt timeline. It is something, because you could think that at that point that Travis Lane, he ended up, this isn't the idea of Nazis have taken over America. This was it was a group that was a big group of German American Bund, and they were really pushing the Nazi ideals. And again, I'm not going to say that, they didn't quite, they were pretty much anti-Semites from the beginning. Like, they were pushing every bad thing about the Nazis, and people were going with it, unfortunately, to show that people are
selling feature for them.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, New York, at that point in that, you always have that racial thing going on.
Unfortunately,
unfortunately, it makes sense. But yeah, if you want to look up, just look up German American Bund, right, as it says here. Look up and you will see what now is very disturbing, what then should have been disturbing to most people. But there's always people who are going to go on with things like that. But Steve, obviously, but again, this is Steve. He's 14. Right? Or maybe a little more because of the idea that
maybe
his
15.
Mom died when he was there 15. But this is a young Steve Rogers who hasn't been face to face with Nazis. America's not in the war yet. He's not a super soldier. You have to get to the point where there was maybe a crowd like Steve deciding and realizing, because he already said he doesn't trust Hitler. So he's already made his way. But at this point, a lot of Americans just wanted that whole stuff to stay in Europe. and really wouldn't be face to face with stuff like this. And now Steve is. I don't think it's as forced as people are saying, and people are saying it's woke because of this. And if you say, how can you say that's something legitimately that happened in history? Yeah, you have Steve here, but he's from New York, and this shit happened. So it's not being any woke deal. It's not supposed to be pushing anything against anybody except, and really, I don't know about you, but in my mind, Nazis are bad, and being against them, I don't think that's that woke.
No,
if that's woke, then hey, I'm woke because
I appreciate this from the simple fact that I had no idea this one. I mean, I could put it together, but I didn't know that the flags were accurate. This whole rally was accurate. It's
completely accurate.
It makes it a lot better for me after talking to you about that.
And it makes you wonder again, like, oh my God, that really happened, and people were really doing that, and people in New Jersey towns were just zig heiling cars and people going by dressed as Nazis. It's crazy to think that, but it did happen, and it's just here. And there's Steve that, and again, where you're going to get the deal is he's going to throw that sandwich on the ground. I'm not going to eat their stinking sandwich.
Yeah, he's not eating that. No way.
No. And that's why you didn't have him take a bite yet. But still, this is something, and, you got to think that Steve, there's points in his life that certain things are going to happen and be done that really shape him as a man, as a Captain America. And this could be one of them. This could be one of many that ends up happening. And, there you go. That's the play. And again, people are saying it's woke, but this sort of thing is always Steve and always Cap. You can say, oh, here we go again, but this is the time frame. And this actually is kind of legit. So unfortunately, but what would you give this overall?
I think I'm going to go a little high on this one, man. I think considering where we were with the last run of Captain America, I'm going to give it a 9. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to give it an 8. I was going to go 7.5. The only thing that makes me laugh is when people are like, oh, here we go again. And to think about what the big scope is. And then I read what the next issue is. And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of fun. Because it basically is Spider-Man and Cap teaming up to go against the Sinister Six. I'm like, all right. Like,
that does sound good.
Like, that seems like what we could have had this issue. Really just could have been that Fantastic Four and that Mecha Transformer Wolf thing. But next issue, that sounds really cool. And then we'll go back into these things of his past, and then we'll have that Travis Lane doing things. But I don't mind seeing Cap. I hope it's not like they're saying, and it's going to be like that one page like the Fantastic Four, because I want to see that. I want to see a cool Spider-Man Cap fighting the Sinister Six. I think that'd be neat. So, yeah, I'm going to go 8. You went 9.
Yeah.
I still am more interested than anything that Lansing and Kelly did with the alien and the shield,
the circle,
is this,
all that stuff.
That. See, that's nonsense. But this is just actual history. So, with that, though, we're going to go off because we still have more books to go. We went on longer than I thought we were going to be. And, last week we did a pretty good job last week, but we went a bit more. But we're going to be talking, me and Jason, right now, talking about Nightcrawler Spider-Man, which I think is a bit of nonsense, but he tried to convince me that it was good as I tried to just figure out what the hell was going on.
That's a Jason book, 100%.
Yeah, that
Jason
is.
And Ruben, those two.
And just, we say it, but I'll repeat it too here right before we go to that, is that Jason and Ruben do the X-Men podcast on the feed, and they ended up having too many X books is why we ended up doing this. But I kind of wanted to see what was going on. I kind of like Nightcrawler, see how he is as a Spider-Man. There's some cool things, but it just doesn't. There's no reason for it. By the end, I'm like, I don't know, but you'll see. You'll see now as we go off to me and Jason. All right, we're going to continue on with a little bit of uncanniness, is how I would say it. And with that, I'm here with Jason. What up, Jason?
Hey, Jim. How the heck are you?
Oh, lovely. And if you have been listening to all of our shows, you would recognize Jason, obviously, from the X-Men show that him and Ruben do. So I ended up asking because they have a bunch of books this week. I mean, a ton of X books. And it's funny because when I usually get the review copies, things like that, and they come in and people will ask me like, oh, what's there to read this week? Is there a lot of things? And there are some bigger things that we're talking about on this show. But as I go through, because I know that you know as well, sometimes they label them very oddly in the file of review copies for us.
They put a weird acronym up front and try to figure out what does that mean.
And I never can figure it out. So I will click on each
consistent. They don't do like one letter at a time. The first 3 letters and then the 2. Who the hell knows?
I think it'd be easy enough just to write the name of the book. I mean, it almost has as many characters. So I sit there and I click through all of them. And what I do is it's funny that you're here doing this. Like, I'm like, but up, that's for Jason and Ruben. Up, that's for. And a lot of that came up this week. I'm like, yep, I'm not doing that. All right, I'm not doing that.
If we wanted to do every X-related book this week, I think there were 7. That's more than a plethora, Jim. That's a lot of books.
Plus one. That is a lot of books.
Like 114% of a plethora.
That is. And especially when, it's not like one of the things to toot our own horn like a Luke Hollywood. We like to go a little more in depth. So I in my mind, I'm figuring out if you and Ruben did that whole play, it would end up being a 18-hour podcast. I think that math is right on. But we were talking and I was trying to figure out, and we were talking about what me and you could do for this new and revised kind of, also a plethora of hosts on this deal, how we're going to do it.
I didn't have enough books this week for DC, so I figured I'd come over and help you fill out some time.
Yeah, so I ended up like, well, we could do this next week. And then I mentioned Uncanny, and you said the same thing that, well, that works out. That lessens the load on the X-Men
and I were already
stuff.
chatting about what to maybe kick to the following week or not do at all. So having a place, an outlet to talk about new number 1 and, one of the more popular X characters and kind of a Spider-Man book at the same time seemed to make sense.
Exactly. And I think that it's a cool play because me going through it alone, we're going to find out. And if anybody is reading this and haven't been reading I've been reading a couple of the X books, not a ton. I've been doing it on the sly too. I haven't told you and Ruben. I'm doing it from the shadows. But even so, when I read through this, it wasn't that I was lost, but it was the idea of, oh, is this new for this issue, because a lot of number 1s have new things, or is this something I should know from the X books that I didn't read? And that's why I'm glad that you're here, because a lot of
turns out.
Yeah, because I was actually surprised. A lot of the things that I asked you already that we will discuss when we're talking about it, you're like, no, it's new right here. You haven't seen it either, and that actually shocked me. But that's kind of the play. Unfortunately, when you jump into something like this, even with a new number 1, but it is Uncanny Spider-Man number 1. Written by Cy Spurrier, art by Lee Garbett, colors by Matt Milla, and letters by DC's Joe Carmona. Now, in that, we're kind of burying the lead a bit because the big play of this, when it was announced, and now when it comes out, it's Nightcrawler Spider-Man. And when it was announced, I saw a lot of people.
This is the one that made me lose my mind when we listed. I listed all the new miniseries coming out. Because this is before we knew anything about Fall of X, really, or the Hellfire Gala. We just got a list of, here's some titles and here's some creative teams. And it said Uncanny Spider-Man. And we're both like, what in the hell could that even be? Yeah, it turns out that it's Nightcrawler. A little while ago, he got kind of disillusioned with the whole X-Men thing, even before they got their asses kicked at the Hellfire Gala. So he was already off of Krakoa and looking for something else to do. Wound up in New York City, and now he's Spider-Man.
That makes sense then. And Cy Spurrier has kind of been the, Nightcrawler guy, right?
Yeah, he's been in a few different miniseries with him. It was Way of X and Legion of X and a couple of one-shots in between. And that leads into this, which is Uncanny Spider-Man. And then he also has a one-shot coming up in January, which is supposed to retcon and fix Nightcrawler's parentage and backstory, which is famously complicated even for X-Men.
Exactly. Now, I will ask you right away, because I actually talked to a couple of people today that do not like Cy Spurrier. They're not fans. Now, what I'm telling you is I talked to myself, Jason, in the mirror. But now,
man in the mirror.
Yes, there were other people.
A comic book, right.
There were other people where I actually said, I'm going to be talking about Uncanny Spider-Man. Hey, isn't that wacky? Hey, Kurt's the deal, Nightcrawler. And they actually said, listen, I don't like Cy Spurrier, but both of them said they like Legion of X. They actually said that they liked it. And I was wondering if you would give it the thumbs up too. Did you enjoy that series? I'm sure Ruben did.
He's
a fanboy.
He pulls in some philosophical hippy-dippy things, sort of, that kind of go past me. It don't really hit me in the sweet spot. But yeah, the basic character work and some cool ideas. Not everything gets tied up at the end in a way that I'm so happy with, but I guess that's why he keeps getting another miniseries to keep going with.
That seems the way like the trick. It is the trick. That's what I call the Ram V method for a lot of these things. And it's funny you say that, because the one person who told me they really liked it, it's like this kind of deal where hippy-dippy stuff, I think, is like the exact opposite for what this guy would like. But he's a big Nightcrawler fan, so he seems, maybe it's just that the Nightcrawler was really well done, but he actually recommended that I go and read that. And I'm like, don't try to rule my life here, buddy. I mean, I'm asking you about a book. I don't need you to give me reading lists. But we end up going into this. And again, when this was announced and when they end up saying, hey, it's going to be Nightcrawler as Spider-Man, I'm telling you, that second it was announced, there were already 20 videos on YouTube screaming, yelling about it. I was going to have a video about it, but I wasn't going to scream and yell because I really didn't have that much knowledge and whatnot. But there was so much of that immediate hate that I just avoided it. I avoided it and thought, well, it's an X book. I'm not going to be talking about that later. And here we are. So you end up starting out. And my big play here going in, besides, I hope I don't get lost with the X stuff, is to, at the end, is this necessary? Do we need to have Nightcrawler as Spider-Man? I'll tell you right now, I'm still wondering that by the end, but I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't hate this and actually enjoyed most of it. I actually enjoyed reading it, but I think that for me, you're going to have to really go far on the, hey, Kurt being Spider-Man means something, because I'm not reading the X books, and that's what I'm worried about.
There are a few things in here that are going to be really exciting for people who are into all the X books, but for the most part, this is a side story. This is not going to be something that is going to change the Marvel universe. It's not going to change the mutant side of the Marvel universe. This is just a character we kind of all know and mostly like, doing a weird thing for a while, and hey, it's kind of fun to follow him along.
And you know what? I've never met somebody that actually told me that they hate Nightcrawler. Like, nobody's like, maybe they don't love him. Maybe, like, I've had people rip apart Gambit left and right. One of them, Eric, he hates Gambit. He just doesn't like.
Okay.
But I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Nightcrawler. I think most people do like him. But then when you put him in the Spidey outfit, all of a sudden people lose their mind. But like you said, this reminds me as me going in as like that cosmic Ghost Rider back when Donny Cates first did it, where I'm like, I don't know if I need this. It's just the set, but I really enjoyed it. So I hope that ends up with
once you hear just Nightcrawler as Spider-Man, you can see in your head what it's going to look like. And it kind of makes sense. He's got the thin, lithe build. He's kind of acrobatic. Throw on some pointy ears and a tail coming out of that outfit.
Tail.
And
those weird claw feet.
Those crazy feet. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Now, here's what Cy Spurrier does as we go in, because you do start out, you get Shocker, you get all these weapons going on with all this tech, and you do end up Kurt showing up, and you see that the, teleportation deal and popping in and out is perfect for Spider-Man. It really is. And I love the idea that they have learned what to do.
These two goons are just a little bit smarter than your average goon, because they know, hey, Spidey needs the tall buildings to swing from, does the thwip,
That's what I like, yeah.
So they go to a place where there's nowhere to swing from, which is, the joke from one of the Marvel movies where he ends up in the suburbs and has to run. But this is not Peter Parker. This is not Miles Morales. This is none of those other wacky multiversal Spider-Men. This is Nightcrawler, and he can just bamf anywhere he wants to bamf to. Yeah.
And
they're
it's
in trouble.
Cool. And that really showed, like, if you're going to play the deal of, like, oh, what would make Nightcrawler a cool Spider-Man? Bamfing in and out. That's what it is, especially later when there's a fight going on and full out people shooting at him. It really works out. Yeah, and they have Shocker tech. They have all these things. They think that they have played it up because the one says that he was on the Spidey Stands fan site. And the other guy, again, there's a lot of quippy stuff. And I do like the idea that Cy Spurrier makes it so that Nightcrawler, he knows that you're supposed to be quippy. He's just not good at it. He's German. He's not very good at the one-liners that makes me laugh.
He does his best. He tries to do the thing. He knows it's part of the shtick. It goes along with the outfit. If you're going to be Spidey, you got to be quippy with the goons. And he does his best.
But overall, even the goons themselves, and even some of the even higher level guys, it gets a little bit jokey. And some people told me but it fits. It fits a Spider-Man book.
And
it didn't like you said, a side story.
Like he took some Twitter joke he liked and just slapped it into the book where it didn't belong. It does feel like it fits with the characters to me.
Yeah. What you're saying is he gets a little more than Zeb Wells, right? I'll give Zeb Wells credit. Sometimes his things are funny, but when they're not, they get really cringy. But I thought this little back and forth with the Spidey stands was funny, because you have the one guy who's like, I learned this from the Spidey stands. You mean the fan site? You went there? He's like, what do you mean? Yeah, I go there. I learn all the info, and they're going back and forth, but they think they're free and clear, and they've stolen human organs. They have gotten this deal, so that sets a little bit of a heroic play.
Yeah, and these guys are, the only reason these guys are here is so we have like an introduction action set piece so we can see Nightcrawler doing his Spider-Man thing.
Yep. It's like a cold open. It's like the beginning of a movie where you have that action scene that's not really connected, but you get to see the action. And I'll give Cy Spurrier again. I'll give him credit, which again, people don't get used to that because I'm not a real big fan of him. But in this book, I like the idea. Right away, you see his powers. You get to see not even just the powers. Most people know them. But you see how cool they are as Spider-Man.
Yeah, in context.
You even get his whole astral sword. You get all these things that are the big play of what he'll be able to use.
That sword's a new thing, too. He had some weird stuff happen with magic, and now it's like his hope and optimism got kind of separated from him and was stolen for a while. And then he got it back, but now he kind of takes it in and out of his own chest to use as a weapon. And weird X stuff, don't worry about.
Yeah, that is weird. But it actually, and even like the character himself, like I said, I like the idea that when he's trying to be quippy, it does even feel like he's trying to enjoy it more, but he's not. Like, you know what I mean? He's just doing his thing. He's trying to be it, but he knows that Spider-Man's a fun character who quips, so he's trying to almost force himself to do it. At points, though, he gets pretty good. He still, like, wants to, hey, was that good? He's, like, asking everybody. Now, when he takes these guys, he takes them down, gets this, box of human organs. I want to know where the tulips on the organ are. But you end up where these homeless guys, these park guys come, and I think that this got a little bit, not cringy, but it was a little bit too much, but it was okay. And it sets up the deal where the one guy comes in, and I'd like to think that that's Mitch Gerard's gone bad. But he comes in, he's like, hey, there's Spider-Man. Can you sign a $20 bill? And he's like, yeah, all right, well, give me the $20 bill. And it's just kind of wacky. But you do get a character that comes out of nowhere and says, where's my baby? And that's where you start getting these connections as a Sentinel shows up to kind of scan them. And that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, you go with that.
This kind of, she's acts like a homeless lady. She's kind of out of it. The other homeless folks or park folks say, oh, that's sad Susie. She loves the mutants. She's really into that. And I do love that she has a hat that says I Heart Latveria. I would wear that hat. That'd be great. Maybe not the free hugs button. I could get arrested for wearing a free hugs button, but
I mean, it's still better than the mustache rides 10 cents. But yeah, still, I don't think you should be wearing that. The guy who ends up where and we find out of this Mystique. There's the spoiler, but going through different personas and, different shape change deal. Later on, it gets a little more sus with the free hugs. But yeah, even then, when you have that, though, you see the Sentinel and it comes down and not knowing all the things. I know that this is trouble. I know the Sentinels and Orcus and all that, and they're scanning. But this, I think that where a lot of people would be more confused about the idea that they scan, they see Kurt, but then all of a sudden they see that, or it registers that he doesn't have the mutant DNA. And is that voice in his head doing it, or do we know?
That is a mystery even to X-readers. So we see, for one thing, the Sentinel looks like a giant giant Iron Man, is because Orcus is working with the guy who now owns all of Tony Stark's tech. So all the Sentinels now use, they're called Stark Sentinels. They look like giant Iron Man, Hulkbuster type.
Which looks cool.
It does look.
I mean, it looks really cool.
Yeah. And actually, the way that Jerry Duggan is tying in between Iron Man and the X-Books is actually working really well. But yeah, this Sentinel scans and it thinks there's some mutants around. And so Nightcrawler there, Spider Nightcrawler, thinks that, uh-oh, we're in trouble. All you homeless guys better scram. But then the Sentinel says, oh, the genetic scan comes back negative. It's not you. And it seems to be related to some voice that Kurt's been hearing in his head. And this is also a brand new thing.
We got this, right?
Right.
And it's kind of weird.
There's some
and
voices.
This voice gets really quippy, too, a little later. It's a weird play. But like you said, I didn't know if this was something that everybody knew. And, oh, that's the voice of his mom. That's the voice of his contact.
Now, in some bits of older Nightcrawler stories, there are these little imps called Bamfs. And I think those are mostly like alternate universe, alt-world type stories. I don't know they've ever been in main continuity. I could be wrong on that, but certainly not for a long, long time. But that's what they look like. It's like little magical creatures related to his teleportation power. But here, it appears in his head. They talk to him when other people are around and no one else can hear them or see them. And that's all we know about them.
Yeah. And it says we got this. And then all of a sudden the Sentinel ends up, because it detected the pheromones. And then it did the scan. And then it says no mutant DNA, and leaves, which ends up pissing Vulture off later, which is kind of funny. The idea of like, well, we have these protocols that has to go by that. But I do like that when it goes off, these guys end up, again, they seem to know a lot more. They're these park folk. Even with the idea of going with Nightcrawler and what they would call them and things like that. But they do talk about, what is it, Sad Sally that you said. And
Susie.
They talk about
Susie.
Susie. They talk about the treehouse. They're like, oh, she loves the deal. She's obsessed with the treehouse. There it is. And Kurt won't turn around. And you have that voice in his head again saying, look at it, look at it, look at it. Come on, look at it. It's like really going at the idea of, come on, turn around, look. And he kind of doesn't and just says, I got to get going. But as he does, he's like, remember, if you need help, get your friendly neighborhood Spudden man. And then just disappear. Yeah, Spudden. And they're like, yeah, I don't think that's going to catch. And that's where the one guy goes, I think you should go with Hellcrawler. The idea of almost knowing more than what most people would know of what is going on there with Kurt and the Spider-Man, which is cool enough. Now, in that, he goes off then to talk to Spider-Man. They're, talking. Spider-Man's trying to like, hey, when you're done, you eat some pizza, you hang out like this. But they're going through like, hey, do you want to do this? And Kurt's going through it. And it is funny because he does mention like, yeah, I'm doing that, and I'm bamfing in, then I use my astral cutlass, and he's like, astral what? Like,
this was a cool scene to me because it shows that Kurt's doing this with Spider-Man's blessing, right? He's not just showing up and, biting his moves. He got an old outfit from Spider-Man. You can tell he definitely modified it and changed it. But yeah, Spider-Man knows he's here. I don't think that Kurt knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. So Kurt unmasks, but Peter doesn't. But yeah, they're hanging out, and he realizes that Nightcrawler's having a tough time, and he's just kind of trying to get his groove back.
And that's why I like it. It seems like this is one of those plays that if anybody would argue and say, well, why would Peter do this? Why would he do this? He really does feel like he wants to do it because Kurt, is trying to find his way and trying to get past, some bad things, and this might help him out. Also, I think that Peter's like, yeah, I kind of want a little time off as well.
Sure, and Peter also knows that the mutants right now are having a rough time. They've been set up and blamed for all sorts of stuff they didn't do. They were selling all these fancy mutant meds to the whole world, and Orcus made it look like all these meds are poisoned. And also, Orcus did some weird magical mojo that turned a handful of mutants into giant killer monsters who just started killing people around the world. And Kurt was one of them. So Kurt, in a monsterized form, killed a bunch of people. But he wasn't in control of himself, so he also feels guilty about that. And that was actually when he left the mutants, was before the Hellfire Gala. He just said, I kind of need to get out of here. And that's when he left.
And that's that almost full page, like a 3/4 page that I didn't know exactly what that was saying, but you do see that. I just thought that they were throwing...
That's the crazy with the giant goat horns version of Nightcrawler.
All I thought was they were, saying that they really didn't like the Beatles' Yellow Submarine movie when I saw the Blue Meanie Killer. I'm like, really? Like, you're throwing shade at them, but you end up going... And that makes more sense to me then, because when you got that, I know, and it's like set up the idea, I know you've had problems, and then I see that, and just being somebody who hasn't read all the things, I thought maybe they kind of twisted and turned them, but he actually, like you said, turned into that. So that was something that I wasn't aware of. But while they're talking about this, and while you do have Kurt doing, you end up having that voice. And that's where I think, like, is that the look? Because you actually then do see that little demon at one point behind them, like in that one panel. Is that what the Banff demon guys so they really did look like that, so it might be part of that. But I like that it's like, it does play off like a kid with ADHD as well. Like, come on, aren't you going to tell them about us? Like, these are your friends. You can do that. And I kind of thought at first it was odd, but then at this point I was like, I think that this is kind of a cool deal. And the panel, I thought the layout of showing where it looks like Kurt's just like, please, just shut up. Like, it's like, I need to do my things. I need to go.
It's well because you realize that this has been going on for some time. He's grown accustomed to it. He's resigned to it. He's not surprised at whatever this voice is doing. So that really adds some texture because we haven't seen Kurt in a little while. And we kind of, in the back of our minds, we can kind of fill in some of the gaps as what he's been going through.
Yeah. And I like even when he's like, leave me alone. And Peter's like, what? I just got your pizza, dude. And he's like, no, not you. You know, the deal, but this voice. And he does seem, like you said, he's not surprised by it. He actually seems annoyed by it a bit. Like, come on, give me a little bit of break. You keep doing it. But that's, again, where you do see, and a little talk about, hey, are you going to be okay? Peter says he's kind of, I'm going to get going. I don't feel that great, whatnot. But even so with that, you end up where Kurt seems down in the doldrums. He does seem a little depressed, but he I'm sure he is pretty, I think he's glad that Peter's there. He has this, what he's going to try to do. And really what he says when he's talking to Peter at first, which really plays off to be very likable, he just wants to help people. He ends up saying, I like doing this because I see some people and then I can help them. And it seems like something that he needs to keep doing.
And that's what the X-Men had kind of gotten away from for a lot of this era. That's what a lot of fans are complaining about. The X-Men weren't acting like superheroes anymore. They weren't going out and just, saving regular people. It was being their own thing.
It is true. I mean, even when I was reading, and I did read, just to let everybody know again, as I read up to the first Hellfire Gala. So it's been a while, but I ended up jumping on a couple of the bigger books in the past couple months just so I knew what was going on. But even then, you're right. I mean, they don't seem heroic. It seemed like the point up, and that doesn't mean that it's bad.
Yeah, it was a different kind of story. I'm enjoying the story, but I can tell why someone who's just into the old kind of one way of telling a story, this is a very different thing. It's almost like an indie book kind of grafted onto the Marvel universe is what it feels like to me.
For me, looking in from the outside now and things like that, and when I was doing it, it felt like okay, the X-Men, all the mutants, they've been treated like crap, even though they tried to help. So they just decided we're just going to do our own thing. And because of that, still people going against them. But it just didn't, like you said, it didn't feel like they were there to help people. They were there to help themselves and try to, kind of stay away, but whatever. But Kurt, like he says, I just like helping people. And he says, I assure you, I am doing precisely what I need to be doing, helping people one at a time. And I like that. I did like that. Neiman looks. Is that like he's looking over and that's the treehouse?
Yeah, that's the treehouse. So yeah,
that's what I figured,
on the night of the Hellfire Gala, this was where the X-Men, like the actual superhero team of mutants who were trying to get back into the regular superheroing thing, they would hang out in the treehouse here in Central Park, and it got burned to a crisp by Orcus.
Yeah. So he looks over and it's like, I'm going to try to get through this, whatnot. But then we go off and you go from here because at this point now you're going to hit a bunch of things that I didn't know if they were new, if they weren't, whatnot. But some of this is the Orcus stuff. Some of this isn't, and some of it's
right.
new. But
so
you go from there.
Orcus has been the main antagonist throughout the whole Krakoan era for like 4 years now. So it's a giant team made up of people who used to be in AIM and Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. and every acronym group in the entire Marvel universe. So it's this giant group who their deal is that they don't want the mutants to be in charge of everything. They see the mutants are going to take over, push humanity outcompete us. So they want to fight that. And in every book, it's expressed a little bit differently. So every book seems to create their own little kind of branch office of Orcus with their own little area boss. And so this is some Orcus group. I don't know if we know where this is, probably New York City. So we see this group of scientists doing their thing, and we learn that the person in charge of this branch office is Adrian Toomes, a.k.a. the Vulture. And no, we have not seen Vulture in any X books of this whole era. I was a big surprise.
Yeah, and he's doing things, and I like where they're like, hey, what's going on, Vulture? And the guy almost gets it out. He's like, listen, I don't go by Vulture, that low name. You call me Director Vulture. I kind of laughed.
That was a weird play, yeah.
He just puts Director in front of Vulture, and that makes it good.
Director Toomes,
Vulture. No,
Director
I
Vulture.
thought that he was, it's funny, and as
Call me Mr. Vulture.
I thought he was playing the idea like I'm better than the Vulture, but then he's like, I'm Director Vulture, and now he's like, got his Ultra Vulture costume on. I'm like, okay, he's going with the Vulture. But yeah, it's kind of a weird play, and they're doing, and again, I don't even know, do we know what they're doing there?
Well, he uses the word hounds, the Hound program, and that's been a thing that's been recurrent in X-Men books for decades now. Hounds are just basically people out or creatures or tech who can hunt down mutants. It's like almost like person-sized sentinels, not robots, but people.
Yeah, and so they're working on some things, and it doesn't go crazy. It's again, there's some funny plays where they're doing these experiments, they're doing this thing. You end up having it kind of go awry, but then you see this this thing like running around throwing people in the background as he gets upset by the director.
So all of the mutants are supposed to be off Earth now. They sent some of them to Mars. Some of them ended up in random dimensions and other books because all the books are doing their own thing. And in theory, any mutant found on Earth, Orcus threatened to kill 10 people for everyone found. Now, this wasn't publicized to humanity because Orcus is putting itself forward like we're the good guys here.
I actually thought, like you said, I'm like, that's a weird play because I think they're playing the good guys.
They've already
like,
told the mutants about that. That's what they told Professor X. You send everybody through these gates and off to, off Earth. And if you don't, we'll start killing humans. And that's how he forced them to do it. But in different books, they take it seriously in some books and not seriously at all in other books. It's one of those where across the different titles, there's not real harmony on that. So in this book, they have, this lady he has captured here is called Feral, who was a part of X-Force back in the 90s, been kind of a minor character since then, but she is an existing character. And they talk about how they know that Nightcrawler is here. We could, play this card and say, hey, you're on Earth, you're going to kill 10 people. But they think that would force him to just, instead of turning himself in, he would just disappear. They don't want that to happen.
Yeah, they actually say that, it might make him feel bad, but he'll just leave. He'll just disappear and we'll never get him. So they have to keep him out.
And they don't really want him to leave. They want him captured.
Yeah. They want to grab him. So I thought, okay, I thought that was actually a pretty cool deal. And, it set me up. But I really was like, holy crap. Like, they really announced to people that they'd kill it. Like you said, then that makes more sense that they would announce it. But I do like, too, where you have Toombs and he's going on and on about, like, okay, well, the Sentinel saw Nightcrawler got the pheromone. Like, oh, why didn't he get him? And I said earlier, they're like, well, when it's scanned, no DNA and it leaves. I mean, it has its protocols and it goes. And he kind of ends up where they start making fun of Nimrod. They start making the idea, and you even have Vultures, like that's what you get when you end up having sex toy looking robots going around.
And you think about it, I guess. I mean, anything can be a sex toy if you're brave enough, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, really, that is true. Your morals are down. But yeah, so I thought it was kind of an attempt at humor there that might not have hit as well, but it's okay. But then we go back to Kurt, because you end up having, this lady jogging through the park and Kurt's eating cold pizza, though I don't love that profile of him. It didn't really look, because you can't really see the ears as well on that. Mm-hmm. But you end up where he's eating the pizza. This isn't as good as cold. And you end up having this girl get pretty much attacked by a person in the same clothes as the woman Susie that we saw before, said Susie. And it was weird. And Kurt comes in. But this is where you see the cool thing of bamfing in and out, because this guy has got two knives. I think it was clever
to use that I Heart Latveria hat, because I definitely noticed it the first time around. And then when I see later on somebody else, I wouldn't notice the clothes are the same because, green pants and kind of a puffy vest.
And but a guy and a girl, yeah. It's so funny that I'm so stupid. I'm like, man, this hat's really taking off. Like, man, I wish that I would have thought of that. Like, why?
It's like the equivalent of all those people in Africa or wherever wearing the Super Bowl loser championship shirts.
It's the Super Bowl loser deal. It's like, hey, there's so many people running around now with the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl champ shirt from last year, making me cry. Yeah, it is true. I actually, as an aside, we may have talked about this before, but there was an outlet store in our town that actually used to get a hold of all of those shirts. That not all of them, but you would get the Stanley Cup loser, but the winner's shirt. You'd get the Super Bowl. And at one point, me and my buddy were collecting them. We thought they were the greatest thing ever. I don't know what happened to them. I thought it was pretty cool. But you end up where you have this fight. And again, I thought, man, everybody loves Latveria here. And he ends up fighting. Kurt doesn't realize, and he kind of thinks maybe this guy, because it's a guy now, maybe the guy stole the homeless person.
Yeah, and this guy is very aggressive. When we saw Sad Susie, he was just kind of shambling around, kind of confused, looking for her baby. But this guy is just going up to this jogger. Who she is. I think she's really funny. She seems like she stepped right out of an Archie comic, is the way she's acting. She's just kind of ditzy and goofy, and
she's got her mini disc player. She's like got old things that she's using for jogging that she doesn't want to give up.
She doesn't realize that her life is in danger from this crazy person with 2 switchblades. Not 1, 2 switchblades.
2 switchblades, and like rubbing them against each other to make that noise that Kurt actually. I like where Kurt also taps on the shoulder.
Yeah, he taps him on the shoulder with the tip of his tail.
With the tail, yeah, and then boom, hits him. But yeah, I was going after them, and it's funny that it's the ditzy girl who then throws herself at Kurt. It's like, oh my God, you're a sexy Spider-Man. I love your exotic accent. Like it's from the dark dimension. And as she does that, she has almost what would be the equivalent of like a mood stone type deal, but it's legit. It's a mutant pheromone stone that starts to
beep. She says that Orchis is selling these for a couple bucks, a little mutant detector. And it's going off, and of course we think it must be because of Kurt. But then we see that Sad Susie, well, the guy wearing Sad Susie's clothes, but looking like a dude, suddenly fades into being Mystique. Which is crazy.
And I like the idea because in my mind, the way that Cy Spurrier play it is that she jumps into like Kurt's arms. She actually jumps in a little after, but she's right next to him. She's hugging him, all this. It starts to beep. I thought it was beeping still from him, but Kurt was going to go, oh, yeah, because she goes, oh, my God, that homeless person is a mutant. I thought he was going to go, yeah, he is a mutant and like take off.
Over there,
but it was. That's a funny play as it is. It's Mystique. And then he bails. This woman gets left she gets left hanging so bad where she
was
sees
hoping
Mystique
to get
and
digits
boom.
or email address or something, but no, she's left high and dry.
She's trying to get tail.
His tail, yeah.
She actually does like the tail at one point. But I like the panel progression because the minute he goes Mystique, and you don't see anything but him coming out of a bath away because he has to get her away. He like grabs her, boom, they go off. And I thought that was really, really cool. And you see the lady, she's running around. But then when you're doing that, it's like such a weird progression, but a cool way of there's a plane flying above.
Well, let's talk about Mystique for a second here, because this is the major continuity point for people really into the current X continuity. Because as far as we knew, she was dead. She was at the Hellfire Gala, and she tried to resist when Professor X made everybody leave. And it looked like she resisted too hard, and she had like a stroke or an aneurysm. And she fell off a cliff into the water. Oh, she's dead, but then her body just wasn't there anymore. So obviously, we know we're in a comic book. The body disappears. We know she's not really dead. But we were wondering when she was going to come back. And to have her show up in the Nightcrawler book is kind of creepy. It is her son. So that's the connection. It makes sense that they would be connected to each other.
And she's looking for things. Now, I will go with the idea that me and you are older fellows. You've been reading comics more than me. Maybe not as all your life, like some. But the idea, though, I think we got into the point because I said it on some other podcast about the idea of bodies and things and whatnot. I am now just going to completely... We have seen so many people die in their body. We just saw Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. We saw the body in Peter's head. She's alive. Nobody dies anymore. But really, if you end up having somebody say they're dead and the body, you know they're coming back at some point.
Soon. Right. Everybody else, like Magneto died a while ago. He's going to come back. But it's like 6 months to a year that he's going to be dead.
It took some time for him, at least. I did laugh when I was looking at the deal where you sent me some things of when Mystique ended up falling. And I guess, is it Sinister that actually him and MODOK are laughing it up? And
it's one of the other Sinisters.
One of the Sinisters. Yeah, that's what I figured. And
Dr.
he's
Stasis.
just there. And he's like, okay, Dr. Stasis. And he's like really explaining, look like she had a stroke. I'm like, yeah, I don't think she's dead when it happened. He's so happy about it, though. But, yep, here she is, though. And, yeah, and she seems out and about, and who knows how it plays out, because it almost looks like she doesn't know really what's going on around her either. So that might be the play.
Before the next issue comes out, X fans can have all the room to speculate that they want whatever's going on with Mystique, because we know nothing except she's alive in New York and really confused.
And confused. I mean, even the idea that now that you see that it's her and going and the whole play before, like her being obsessed with the treehouse, almost the idea that she's trying to get back to it, but it's not there and she can't explain it in her head and whatnot. But that's what happens when you fall off a huge giant building onto the rocks below. I mean, seriously. But I do like that progression. Like I said, you can see the plane in the air, and then you kind of boom, boom, and then you're in the plane. But I didn't really know exactly what was going on. But you said even this is kind of a new
now we're
thing.
in like an epilogue, basically. We're not going to see Nightcrawler anymore.
Like.
We see him and his mom bamf off mysteriously, and we don't see them. So this is just kind of another thing for us to speculate about. We see this team of kind of random unknown mercenaries on a plane flying into LaGuardia, we're told. One of them is hiding his book, which is it Fils et Fromage?
Fils et Fromage.
I don't speak French, but I'm pretty sure that's chicks and cheese.
I think it is chicks and cheese. I speak a little French, but I mean, this guy, I love the idea that he's trying to hide it, but he's not doing a great job from us because it's funny. But I'm like, oh, and it's a lady there in a bikini with a big cheese wheel. I'm like, all right, that seems pretty funny. But yeah, I ended up again. This was where jumping into a new number one, but things that was set up in X stuff.
This
I didn't know if this was new or not.
Anything about.
Okay.
There's the one guy who seems to be like the main guy. He has little skull tattoos around his right eye. His name is it Kramer or Creamer?
Kremer?
Yeah, Kremer. I don't know how you say it.
Red Sergeant Kremer? Yeah, Kramer is there. But yeah, he's got those. So, he has
and they're a team being called in. We saw that the Vulture said he was going to outsource the hunt for Nightcrawler. So this is the team he's calling in, just some group of mercenaries. And we kind of go through how, they've been given all this information about Nightcrawler. They're flying into New York City. They see some pictures from him back when he was a monster. And then at our last page, we realize, they work with Silver Sable.
Silver Sable's there, and she is on a glider. It looks like, a goblin glider, but it's a Sable glider here. And it's funny because I'm reading this, and you have that Kramer, and he's talking. He's like, this thing's a freaking monster. And then you end up where it ends up being Silver Sable's like, I don't know. I'm looking at it now. He's cute. I'm like, I thought that was still Kremer. I'm like, oh, man, he's digging him.
One of those word bubbles that comes from off panels. You don't really know who it's going to.
The thing that got me, though, is because when they're on, because you see the plane in the distance, and it makes sense. And once you see what's going on, is somebody looking at a heads up display out. But the thing is, you were getting Silver Sable in the kind of like overcom word bubble. But then because we pulled out, we get a regular word bubble that had been Kremer. I'm like, all right, he's in the Nightcrawler. I guess he's into that. The other guy likes chicks and cheese. Everything's up for grabs. It ends up being Silver Sable, though. Looks pretty cool. I mean, she's there, and it looks like she's, just doing her thing on her glider and says Silver Sable.
She's one of those characters who just kind of pops up every once in a while. And here, she's never really stuck in my head as having a strong character. Like, I couldn't describe what makes her tick or why she's cool. She's just one of those she usually has a team of some sort of high-tech goons to do a thing. I don't think her country exists anymore. Is Simcaria gone, I believe?
Yeah, I think it might be. And that's a weird play because, again, we were trying to figure out, and I said, I know that there was a book that you ended up having her in, and now I'm starting to think it might have been in a weird play out of nowhere. I think it was the Bullseye mini-series thing that we had at some point. I don't even know what it was, but now I'm thinking that they crossed paths and there was a lot of Simcaria stuff that you kind of triggered that. I don't know, but like you said, she just pops up. I like her look, but it doesn't really stick with me. Afterwards, I'm sure there's, some Silver Sable League or something out there that really love her. But like you said, it's somebody to me that just shows up, does her thing, disappears, and we don't see her for a while, but I don't mind her. I think she kind of looks kind of cool, and we'll see how this goes.
We haven't seen her in X-Men, so this is not connected to anything. I think this is just Cy Spurrier trying to bring in another cool bit of continuity, another cool Marvel character, so that instead of just having random goons hunting Nightcrawler, it's Silver Sable. And why not?
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, you get that a lot of times with, say, like a Wolverine. Like every character in that play, if they, if they're on the team, then the team elevates, and you're like, okay. Because if we ended up at the end of this, I'm like, who was that team? You'd be like, who the hell knows? I mean, they're just these guys. Now it's Silver Sable's team. It works out. So yeah,
it gives them a little more oomph.
Yeah. So I actually thought that was pretty cool overall. But overall, what would you give this?
Yeah, I think this was a fun book. I like how Cy Spurrier writes Kurt Wagner, however German you want to say, Nightcrawler. So, which is important because he has the voice down. He has the the heart he has, that he's been going through some rough stuff, but he's trying to come back. So I think the core of the book is going to be strong. I think the art looks pretty good. I love the way Lee Garbett draws Nightcrawler as Spider-Man, because you see that he's definitely Nightcrawler, but he's also definitely doing a Spider-Man thing. So he captures that look really nicely. This book was a couple of weeks later than it was supposed to be. And I think towards the end, especially in that jogger scene, some of the backgrounds really go just, flat color. So I think maybe that's where some of that came in. But for all the characters look fantastic, so that's important. Yeah, I'm excited to read the rest of this. I like the little connections to continuity. But yeah, I'll give it a 8.3 out of 10.
I'm gonna go. It's weird. I was gonna go 7.5 when I read it myself, but now that I understand what I should have known or didn't know and what's new and whatnot with that you explaining the other things, I'm gonna go 8. I actually liked it. I thought it looked good. Like you said, at a point near the end, yeah, it kind of got a little bit off, maybe, but overall, I thought it looked pretty good. I like that clean-looking cover deal. I thought that looked pretty cool. I mean, most of the things in this I thought were pretty cool.
Yeah,
so,
the Tony Daniels cover looks really cool.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty neat. I thought that was pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm going to go 8. You went 8.5, so pretty much.
8.3. 8.3.
Oh, 8.3. I
crazy.
thought you were a little more positive than that. I mean, you're starting to get negative here. Yes, I'm an 8. So, what am I? But with that, thank you for joining me. And everybody, if you haven't listened to the X-Men podcast with Ruben and Jason, go and listen to that. More for, I would say, Jason, not Ruben. We'll throw Ruben under the bus here. Ruben? Ruben. And I'm sure that Ruben will listen to this. And now all I'll hear is that Jim gave Cy Spurrier a good score, because anytime Cy Spurrier even comes up...
Well, we're trying to warm you back up to Cy Spurrier, because I hear he's going to be on the podcast again next week. So
yeah, it'll be
we'll
next
see
week
how
with
that
the
goes.
Flash. I think I'll like this a little. I'll point something out here. I'll point something out that I really liked about this, and it's something that it's like addition by subtraction. There were not many, if at all, any narration boxes in this.
That's very
and
true.
There weren't a lot of metaphors. And that's the two things that drive me nuts. Similes, metaphors, and narration boxes. So we'll go 3 things, but those are the things that drive me nuts. But he seemed like he was focused on telling a fun story and didn't try to do anything like crazy like that. So I'll give him a lot of credit. So 8 out of 10. I'll go up to an 8.1. Almost to what you are. I'm going to go up a little tick more because no narration boxes.
No narration boxes. There are some square boxes that turn out to be the Vulture speaking a couple panels later, but that's
it's
different.
Not that omnipotent. This is like a, sludge in a honeybee thing. I mean, he goes real wacky.
That sounds better in German, I bet, but okay.
That was pretty good. But yeah, thanks for joining me, like I said. And we're going to go off and finish the podcast with one last book. All right, and I'm here with my man, Brandon. What up, Brandon?
What up?
What up? And I asked you to do this, and you said you wanted to do it because you are a Wolverine fan. You're the resident Wolverine fan. At one point back in the day when we were doing the Marvel podcast together, there was that dispute of whether you were more of a Wolverine or a Spider-Man fan, and everybody was going, you're Wolverine. You're like, well, I really do like Spider-Man. But just to let everybody know, you're also a big Ben Reilly fan as well. So we have all that. Yeah. So we will be having you on the Marvel podcast once again, like we did back in the day. I don't think we're going to get Eric back at all. Eric actually, it surprises me sometimes when he brings up things that he had read back in because I didn't realize he was on the podcast for as long as he actually was, but he is long gone now. But here we are. Predator versus Wolverine. It is issue number 1. We thought it was a one-shot at one point. You definitely said that you didn't know that.
Yes. When this ended, I was taken aback. I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I remember I did a news story on it, so I kind of knew. But even as I was reading, I was like, okay, is this continuing? How are they going to do it? But we'll see, where you do have the Wolverine going through different time frames, different timeline deals with the Predator showing up to cause,
mayhem.
All that fun and mayhem and death and destruction. Yeah, well, he likes to fight the biggest things, including Orca at one point, which was crazy. But this is Predator versus Wolverine number 1, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Ken Lashley, present day art, Greg Land and Jay Leiston in the Young Wolverine, Adria DeVito in the Team X stuff, colors are Juan Fernandez in the present day in Team X, Frank Diamara on the Young Wolverine, and VC's Corey Petit lettering it all. He is the man.
Sometimes you can't find the credits, and other times they're so detailed you don't want to read them all out.
Here's the thing: as we go through, a lot of times when I do some of these Marvel things, we will end up, and I'll read the recap page, I'll read the info page. You're gonna have to do that on your own because that's another novel in and of itself.
Yeah,
with
it's
this
just origin stories, though, basically for both of them. It gives you a quick rundown of what they're about.
Now, with that, there are some things that people might not know about the Predator. I would think that people reading Marvel books, though, this might be a big enough thing that maybe they wouldn't know Wolverine, but I think that most people do. Now, I think
a prerequisite for enjoying this book is at least having a background for both the characters.
Yeah, for both. And so when you end up starting this, you actually said that you like this. I think you're going to like it a little more than me. My basic thing is I was kind of bored, but when you think about it, if me and you are going to write a Predator book, Predator versus anybody, you have to think of what you're going to do with it, because that's the thing. You're playing them off Wolverine, and you're kind of going to go with both of them being trackers, both of them being able to find. And I just don't know if that's the greatest thing that I thought of.
Very
as
similar skill sets, which, kind of was some of the, I guess, my interest initially coming into this. I always remember, when I was super heavy into reading everything all the time, seeing the Batman vs. Predator stuff, and there were a couple other ones. Aliens vs. Predator, the comic series and stuff like that. But I never got to read any of them. So when this came around and Wolverine was on that's the entire story of it catching my attention. Just I never got to read the other ones that previously would have probably, grabbed my attention. I probably would have liked them in some aspects. And this one, just brand new, no background needed. I was like, all right, good jumping on point.
Yeah, and you jump in and you get present day Wolverine where he is all destroyed. I mean, the art at the beginning by Ken Lashley is really good, right?
Testing the healing factor limits.
Oh my goodness. I mean, when he's running
his adamantium bone there.
He's got his bone just sticking out in a way that's even really crazy, because it's not even sticking out. It's just still there, right? It's still there. Yeah. So he's there, but he's leaving a trail of blood. He's getting chased by the Predator. And again, if you know anything about the Predator, when you see those 3 red dots, there's trouble there.
Everyone knows when you try to run as a kid with no arms, you're not nearly as fast either. You've tried that before.
During my childhood, I had both arms, so I don't know if I know. But he is trying to run away. He's hurt. And you get that beginning of, oh my God, I'm usually the hunter, but now I'm the hunted, I'm the prey, I'm leaving blood behind, I'm really, throwing it out there. And then you kind of end the scene into the credits page by having Wolverine trying to get away and the Predator actually revealing himself to okay, we're going to take it.
Pulling the cloak off,
Yeah, and you have Wolverine down below. They're in this rocky
reminds me of Cliffhanger,
Canada. Yeah, it does look like it. And so when you're doing that with it, again, there's a cool scene. It starts it off. It's exciting. You want to know what's going on.
He sees him there, right? I mean, the angle is a little funny.
Maybe he doesn't, because he's just looking over, and we'll have to see what goes on. But that's okay, that's what I expected from this book. All right, it's cool. You kind of get a really a cold up. You don't know. You're right in the scene. Wolverine's already hurt. We're going to get.
I'll be honest. I like that though. There's not. I know they get into. We're about to transition into the hard cut here and build the backstory, but this coming in as what I thought was a one shot. That was fine for me, and I was all right, let's go. Yeah.
And I wanted to keep that going because in this whole play, I mean, I think that it's very obvious, and how we're going to do this is it's going to show this history. Oh my God, young Wolverine ran into the Predator. Weapon X.
I didn't need that, but I ended up liking it enough.
I'm actually saying to you, I just want to see present day. I just want to see him getting attacked.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree there. When I started picking up what's going on here, we're going back to 1900, and then we see a young, skinny version of what I assume is this same Predator.
Here's the thing: it really spells out that there's multiple predators at the end.
I still think that's the same one that's just brought a group back. Maybe
it may be. It actually that's what I'm saying. We'll have to see in the solicits. It actually said, "Hey, Wolverine ran into a Predator before," and then he ended up later, because even at the one point, this Predator sees another Predator. There's some crazy stuff going on.
It took me, that's also why it took me a minute to figure it out when it said current day. I'm like, do they mean current day, like 1900 current day?
No. So that's the big play, though, when we go back to young Wolverine here.
He's a young, strapping lad.
I don't really... I'm not that interested in young Wolverine in the 1900s Alaskan territory, right?
I like Wolverine as a character a lot, but Bone Wolverine, when as soon as the bones come out, it's so less intimidating to me and not as interesting personally. I like the trauma post, metal on his skeleton.
And so I was actually going to say to you, if it was me and I had my druthers, I could go with Weapon X Wolverine. Pretty cool. You have a group. Maybe they're sent out.
And that looks like what the cover hints at, too.
Yeah, and we have it. But young Wolverine is just not that interesting to me. So he ends up where...
It's my least favorite portion of his life,
yeah, and
honestly.
it's a big part. And it's Greg Land's art, which, I don't know. It just isn't gritty enough for what we ended up starting with, the Ken Lashley stuff. So what we get in this young Wolverine, though, is that he's out and about. He's in the Alaskan territory. He's doing all of his gathering and stuff. And they end up selling their wares at a certain point when, the traders come in. But it's known that he always has stuff to sell. So he goes into this bar. He's got the most,
it seems like.
Yeah, and these guys attack him. As that's going on, a guy wants to hire him who claims, my son has been kidnapped. We have all this stuff going on. It's a job for this guy. So they want to hire Wolverine. And then just to show that he's pretty tough, after drinking a lot, he ends up beating the crap out of these two guys. I mean, he looks like he kills them. So he ends up, and they were going to kill him. And he even says one of the interesting things is he doesn't want to pop the bone claws here, because then it makes people, all of a sudden people are going to start.
That's good enough without him, it looks like.
I mean, and this is the part where it would be like, oh my God, a demon or, a ghost. This is 1900. So he ends up, he uses a bunch of saws and blades. Yeah, he ends up sawing the guy's arm off. And this guy then wants to hire him. While that's going on, because we're not getting the Predator stuff yet in the young deal, you have the Predator just randomly going around killing things.
Yes.
He's there with a few days to kill.
Can we talk about this? After he lands, he finds a previous Predator here that was killed, but not by Wolverine.
Maybe that's what drew him there, and then he's like on the attack. He ends up seeing the blade.
I just feel like they were trying to foreshadow something with Wolverine diving down to get the beavers, who I guess hang out in frozen water, and then the kind of... Maybe the Predator tried to do the same. He didn't make it up. They're showing like Wolverine is stronger there. I don't know. I'm thinking too much about it.
I think he just sees that and he's on, the hunt. And he's hunting things. And you do get that progression. Again, Predators, a lot of times they just want to be the biggest predator.
The best hunter. Yeah. To me, that's their whole goal, to be the most elite hunter, yes.
So when he's doing this, hey, he's going to take down an elk, a deer. He ends up going after a lion. It looks like, and eventually he takes down an orca. Like we said, it's just crazy. Then while that's going on, you just have this play with young Wolverine he's being lied to. You don't really get it, but it's not a shock. But the basic play is he's being led to take care of this group of people because supposedly they ended up kidnapping a kid. He ends up, hey, father and son things go with me. But when they end up going through, they end up seeing just this like horrific part of the woods where it looks like the Predator killed everybody and pretty much skinned them alive.
Anybody within a 5-mile radius here is hanging from the tree.
Yeah, they're all dead. And, with that, Wolverine's all pissed off. They think these people had done it. Well, while that's going on, you do actually see the Predator is kind of on the hunt here.
Yeah.
And this is where, when things are going down out in the woods and in this hunting cabin that they are told these people are holed up on, he's not worrying about popping the bone claws. He pops those and they go running in while the Predator's watching. These guys, the thing is, this was a dupe. The guy who ended up, setting this up, he just wanted his money that these guys didn't give him. They had a train robbery.
They took too much of the cut, and he's just taking it all back.
He wants it all back. He wants these guys all dead. Wolverine goes in slicing and dicing again. He goes feral because of this whole play of not just, hey, these people stole this kid. He actually also thinks that these people ended up getting some of the, some of the Inuits and some of the natives.
Yeah, he thinks they're responsible for all those bodies outside.
Yeah, and so it's like, these guys are awful. One of the best things is when Wolverine goes in and he just starts going to town. He gets shot by that guy then. The guy reveals he's fat.
Yeah.
So then the guy likes to tip his cap. He's like, hey, got my money, tip my cap. Head gone. You end up where the Predator just shows up. This is a skinny Predator too, right? I mean, look at this guy. He is posing off in these trunks. It looks like he's like, Mr. Sports Illustrated swimsuit model here. He comes in, he's got the fishnets going on. I'm like, look at you, Predator. And then the fight's
on. Looks like
a
13-year-old boy putting his football pads on for the first time.
Yeah,
here.
it does. The helmet is huge. So Wolverine attacks and does get him like kind of in the neck area under the deal. And that's just what it does.
It looks like a jugular shot with the way, because he's both like, oh, we're both fatally hit and we're both healing in our own
and
ways.
They're going to test, he says, we're going to test the healing factor, because while Wolverine gets the Predator in the neck and kind of the, the face area, he gets run through with the spear. The only reason, in my mind, Wolverine went for that headshot was because you want to have the Predator take off his helmet to see the Predator.
Just how ugly he is. Yeah.
And he is so ugly. I mean, but again, it doesn't really shock Wolverine because he's too busy getting run through. He's too busy at points getting claws cracked. And so you end up just having, this is the big fight. You end up at one point, Wolverine grabs the spear out, and then he goes to run, but then he gets hit by that glaive.
The shuriken or whatever.
Whatever you would call it, the deal. And so what had happened earlier, you did see, and we're told by Wolverine, where he keeps all of his pelts, all the things that he gets. Like you said, he dives in the water and just grabs these beavers and comes up, and then he has the pelts and goes into the cave. And there was a bear there that was hibernating. But even then, you see why he did it, because those other guys that tried to kill him are like, hey, where's your stuff? We're going to take your stuff. Well, Predator ends up tracking him down again, tracking blood, going through. Predator's pretty nimble in this. Like, at this point, I'm telling you, Wolverine is way lucky.
He's just running for his life. Yeah,
he is way lucky at this point. And I think that in the weird way where we would have thought that the play would be the Predator keeps coming back because he has to get better. He has to go, or even other Predators show up. I think that Wolverine's in big trouble here. And he runs into this cave. This bear's pissed. He's sleeping. The bear's just hibernating. And the bear actually goes and just seems to rip apart the Predator.
Yes, looks like it sneaks up on him.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the bear, I think Wolverine's in big, big trouble. Now, with that, Wolverine has that weapon, and the Predator has pretty much decapitated the bear. And now the fight's still on, but at least Wolverine got to end up running away. So you're doing that. Okay, there was some action there with the Predator chasing him down, but I don't know why I wasn't that interested in that story, the setup, and hey, I have my kid here, and we're going to get that
the
money. The
interesting part is because this is where they transition to like the next portion they're going to tell us about, possibly the next time Wolverine.
This is the Weapon X stuff. Yeah, this is all Weapon X stuff.
Does Wolverine not know this bear gets taken out? But it's almost like he thinks he escaped this Predator and the bear won the day. Well,
I think he does. I think that when we go back
to this cave all the time.
I don't know. That's the thing. I think that basically we'll go back and we'll actually continue that story. Then we'll pick up these. That's the kind of thing that I didn't like, especially going through 3 timelines. Like, first off, we know that young Wolverine's going to survive.
Yeah.
He's not going to die. He's going to survive, obviously.
The tension is in the story they cut from immediately. The current day. That's the one you want to see.
Maybe you could have played. Do you think it would have been better? Like, say we just had 3 issues. First issue, young Wolverine. Go through, have like 40 pages, young Wolverine. He's doing his thing. See how it ends. Next page, next issue, Weapon X. And then the final issue, present day. Maybe it would have been better that way, because I think that in this, like, there is no real tension.
Yeah.
You know that Wolverine is going to die, whatever's going to happen here. But and you don't really have the connection here. Like you said, like at the end, you might want to see like a Predator that's almost dead, get in his ship and go off, so that when we see the Weapon X, he's gathered an army. He's back. It's him. He's doing this.
That's kind of, I'm saying, if I had to, I'd enjoy what I'm reading. Like, I don't hate this story. I think it's good enough. It's entertaining to me. But I think the way it's being told is kind of the incorrect way to do it. It's taken my interest out of it a little bit because we've spent so much time in 1900s fighting this predator
and didn't even finish the story. It seems unless the predator in the 1900s decapitates
just keeps
a bear
coming back
and then leaves. Like
he learned, and now he's taking that back and coming back stronger. I do think that's eventually what's kind of happening. I don't know how long these predators live. Honestly, it's kind of like a weak spot for me in the movies. Either I don't forget or I haven't watched enough of them to know. But you would think this one, if he's lived as long as Wolverine, is elite of the elite anyway, even without his Wolverine encounters, because they're a predator. Unless you're the top of the food chain, you're not surviving in that species. So
and when you say that, when you look, and here's the funny play: if Wolverine would have not gotten the jugular, right? Because he went for the jugular shot. Somehow he went through the eye and ripped out the predator's eye, right? And so the eye.
So you have a mark to know.
Yeah, you need a mark. Now, in that, you
they
do
could
have.
show the neck. You just got to wait for him to take his helmet
That's
off.
weird. It's like, man, my neck hurts.
You got the hickey still, buddy?
Here's the thing, too. And when we're talking about the play, there is what looks like, and again, people who would know more Predator stuff, but is there a ton of real, like, hardcore Predator? I don't know. But he does have that different helmet. When you get to the end and you see the guy in the middle, it has to be the guy from 1900.
The scaled helmet.
He's the only one who has the
it.
scaled helmet. Everybody else looks like they have the newfangled helmets. Like, look at those teenage Predators with their new kicks.
Their
like he's
tribal
off, right?
tattoo helmets.
With those stupid helmets. Like, I got old school. I got the scaled deal. But so it does look like that, and they even have a little different. But I don't know that that's enough for somebody like me or you, where we don't really know what. You know what I mean?
Until you said it, and I just scrolled to this last page and looked real quick. I didn't pick up on it until now, And I do see them kind of focusing in some shots here now on that, like, brain-style top of the head he has.
Is this guy coming back 60 years later? Because, we're probably in, and there's South America many years ago, the Weapon X stuff, you would think it's like 70s, late 60s, something like that. Is this guy coming back 60, 70 years later? Because, man, I'm pissed off. I beheaded that bear and you ran. Like, is that the end? Like, because if that's the end of the young Wolverine fight, that is pretty lame, right?
Yeah,
because
it just, again,
even him
scrolling
cheering,
to the beginning here, it's the brain style, helmet he's got at the very, so it does kind of look like that's how they're threading this like predator.
That must be him to get, and he's
showing their
back.
history. Again, because we end it with the Weapon X, that's a portion of Wolverine I really enjoy. I really dig. Cool. So I think I'll even like the next issue a little more.
Do you think it's funny that actually when the Predator, he goes back and he's like, listen, because again, the Predator, I'd love to see the meeting when he goes back to try to convince all the other Predators to come with him, because it should be like,
really talk. I know you'd love to hear that.
Like,
conversation.
I'm telling you, they're like, you didn't beat this guy.
We've been back here 3-4 times now, buddy, with help. Now it looks like it. Maybe that's it. He brings help the second time, and now this third time he's all alone. Like, we're not going back with you again. You're a loser.
In the second time, it just ends up being a coincidence that he's like, oh, this is going to be great. All you Predators here, come with me. We got one dude. We're going to go. But then when they go back there, it's Weapon X. It's the whole team now. And that's, I think, the only reason you have numbers, and seems kind of a little forced. But we'll see. Because you got, obviously, Sabretooth, Maverick,
he's not
and
dying.
Jackson.
Maverick's not dying.
You're not getting those. So but it'll be a cool fight. You'll have them going to town. Fun. So it's basically South America, and that's more of a Predator type feel, too, than in the, frosty Arctic, in the, Alaska deal. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Weapon X does. Yeah. But overall, I was kind of bored with the young Wolverine. What would you give this?
I'm going to give it a 7.5. I enjoyed the art in the beginning, I think is my favorite. I liked the art at the end, the Weapon X kind of stuff. The 1900s story and art-wise was my least favorite portion of the issue. It made up the most of it. So, but I didn't hate it either. There's some fun to be had in there, like, hunting Shamu. I don't want to hear humans are the only ones taking them out anymore and being solely blamed for that.
And it looks like he's like riding it, like he's like loving everything about it. He's like,
I can't tell, is he riding it or murdering it in cold blood?
I want to put like the whole woohoo in a word bubble as he's enjoying. That's why they came back.
Namor's going to have a word with the Predator.
Yeah, really.
Next, so,
Predator goes back and he's like, you get rides on these orcas. It's awesome. It's the best thing ever. And so we'll see how it goes. I mean,
I'm enjoying it enough. I would say this. Some of my negatives, I would say, are more my expectations coming into it and not necessarily what it was presented to me. I like find what it was given to me and how it was presented and how it looked and how it was told. It's not what I thought it was going in, but it's a fine story and I look forward to continuing.
Yeah, I'm a 6 out of 10. And really, when, again, I said I didn't really need to see young Wolverine.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, seriously, if you end up at the end, now you have multiple Predators coming, but pretty much you do look, and you look at the Weapon X squad, and that is like an Arnold with a Jesse Ventura.
Yeah. It's totally Predator one ripoff, right?
That could be really fun. That could be really fun with it
fun.
as they go against multiple Predators. So I think that might
Who's
be
covered
fun.
in mud out of that group? Who's going mud?
Oh, it's Maverick. But his mask is going to end up screwing. Kroll is just going to be, I don't know.
He's dead. I think he's going to be the first one trying to be sewed together.
Jackson is way done. But you end up with all of this going down. Like the idea of Weapon X versus a group of Predators, like that's the action that I want to see now, not young Wolverine grabbing some beaver pelts.
Yeah,
he's going into town. He's getting a kid. Like
that was the filler to pad out the $7.99 price tag.
It's almost like Ben Percy thinks like, oh, I have to have a legit story besides Predator and Wolverine. No, you need Predator, Wolverine. That's all we need.
Yeah, I just want to see them stab each other with their stabbing.
Yeah, and
things.
that's why the Weapon X works, because they could just be sent somewhere. You don't need to set up. You end up, hey, a bunch of people are dying around here. They're doing this, they're doing that. They get sent there. They're there. Just like Predator. You don't really need that much backstory. But yeah, the whole play of a kid and he's kidnapped it's not Predator. That's the worst thing of it. Like I would be the editor and he's like, this is my story. I'm like, well, what about these pages? Because I don't see any Predator. Well,
like
this
those
is Predator.
First 5 pages, I want that 40 of it and one shot this for $10, and there you go. Glossy it all.
Then I remember this. Weapon X. That's all you. Don't go further back. That's all you need. But we'll see. We'll see how it is.
Rematch too. Like I don't need 100-year history, 130-year history with these two guys. I just a rematch.
You end up seeing that, like you do with the Wolverine at points too. Suddenly, we're seeing that the Predator, he served in World War II. Now he's protesting the Vietnam War. He's a big Beatles fan. It's like Predator becomes Forrest Gump.
Him and his buddies just came down to take a picture across Abbey Road here, and Wolverine and Weapon X showed up.
Selfies, right? They're doing that. At one point, the one girl's yelling, "Run, Predator, run!" He's run like Forrest Gump. He's on the Alabama football team. It'll work out. Maybe that'd be fun, but we'll go. I'm a 6. You're a 7.5. See you like it more, but we'll check it out when it comes back. We'll check it out again when it comes back. But I will have you join me for more Marvel stuff because you are a big Marvel fan. You just have lapsed in your reading like a lot of other people.
Poking around the pond and seeing what I can dip my toe into here slowly but surely.
The pond. Are you beaver pelt hunting? You're there and you're fish that Predator
than the stadium hole somebody fell in earlier this week in Buffalo.
That is true. So. What, on cocaine and LSD and stuff like that?
LSD, marijuana, alcohol, and there was something else in there too, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe like wings. Wing sauce would be that last one.
Buffalo Red Hot.
I forget what comic we were doing and what even podcast we were doing, but I did make the joke about if you fall through a table, then you're definitely from Buffalo. Something happened in the issue. I'm like, that guy went through a table. He's from Buffalo.
He's tailgated one too many times.
Oh, my goodness gracious. But yeah, and I hope there are some people still around that were listening to us back in the day that are happy to hear you talking a little Marvel.
Back a little bit, Kids are older now. Like I can relinquish a little responsibility.
Yeah, that's really what happened. So,
yes,
but I have you back for this.
They can feed themselves.
for some DC, I'll get you back fully. So that would be cool. A lot of people are jumping back at this moment, so maybe that is the case. But thanks for joining me as always.
Yes, sir.
And that is it for this week's show. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody who joined me to talk Marvel books this week. We'll continue doing this Marvel Spotlight podcast, and maybe we'll just keep adding books, and it'll just get bigger and bigger. This one, a pretty big podcast, but if you want to go and get more podcasts, more Marvel, DC, indie, manga shows, you can go over to our Patreon at patreon.com/WeirdScience. Help support us for everything we do here and get a ton more. So thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.